Guys, we ended our Sunday night with a tie. It's like kissing your sister. What are we doing? Hey, it's Scott back with Single Barrel Sports Podcast. We got a good episode ahead. Tune in. Let's hit the music. Pat McAfee said today we got our guy.
How many sixth graders would it take to beat LeBron James in a game? Ready for the ultimate sleepers?
Shedeur Sanders went number 144 in the draft. And we are back, episode 38. It's kind of hard to believe we've made it this far. You may notice if you're looking at the screen here, Deeb is not with us tonight. He is on a beautiful vacation. But we have some really special guests tonight that I will introduce in just a moment. If this is your first time tuning in, welcome back, or not welcome back. Welcome to the show. And if you guys have listened before, welcome back. We are going to talk big time about fantasy football tonight. Not just talking about our players, but really talking about what fantasy football is. So if you have never played before, or if you're more of a casual player, stick around. I hope there's going to be a lot of insight tonight. With me are the two commissioners of my primary fantasy football league, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves. So, Drew, why don't you go first and just tell us who you are and just give us some information.
Sure thing. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me back, Scott. I know everybody was like, man, we got to get that guy on that talked about Wimbledon. He was great. And here I am. So happy to be back. And yeah, I am in a bunch of fantasy leagues, probably too many, which we'll talk about later. I spend too much of my time thinking about it and participating in it. It means a lot to me. It's a great hobby. It's a great thing to do with friends, office stuff, fancy rules. That's all.
Hell yeah. And also with us tonight is Travis. Travis, why don't you tell us about yourself?
What's up, man? Thanks for having me on. This is new for me to be hopping on the single barrel pod. I'm happy to be here. A little bit about me. I love sports in general. I follow NFL really closely, like Andrew does. I'm in a bunch of fantasy leagues. Follow some MLB. Not really into basketball as much as Andrew would like me to be, but we'll see. We'll see going into this year. But yeah, like Andrew, fantasy football has been really, really good for me. Allows me to connect with friends and keep connections with friends I went to school with and things like that. So it's cool, man. I'm looking forward to the conversation today. Let's get it rolling.
Hell yeah. And like you guys, I've been doing this for a really long time. Fantasy football was brought down to me by my brother. He's 10 years older than me. And I probably started playing fantasy football before most people my age were even learning how to use the internet. So it's been ingrained in me for a long time. And definitely just pumped to talk about it. I know we always talk a lot about this every week. We've got, league chats and group chats and whatnot going on. But before we dive into the rest of the show here, you guys are like best friends, right? Like you guys, I mean, it's not just like a football commissioner thing, right? Like you guys go way back, right? How do you two know each other?
Yeah, we grew up in Florissant, Missouri, going to church together, and then we lived like probably 5 minutes apart. Our moms were really good friends, and then we just kind of grew up together. We're a few years apart. We were in each other's weddings. Our friends are really close. Our wives are really close. So it's been together a while.
Yeah, we really got a lot closer as I was in high school and Andrew was in college, and we started playing some ultimate frisbee, and that was kind of where we really started linking up and stuff. And we were unmatched out there. Andrew throwing me the deep ball, me running and going getting it. So
I
yeah,
was
it's kind of
nasty. I was
yeah,
nasty.
yeah. Shout out Gino. Shout out Gino. Uh, but yeah, we've been friends for a long time, and like Andrew said, our families are close. We've got kids that are similar in age. So
Yep.
yeah, it's been kind of a natural transition to kind of running a fantasy league together. It's been fun.
Hell yeah. And we'll talk a lot more about that fantasy league tonight. But hey, just another example of sports bringing people together. And I've seen I've seen him throw the frisbee. He's seen me throw it, and it ain't pretty when I do it. So, yeah, I believe it. I believe that you guys were quite nasty out there.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, before we dive too far in tonight, we always do just a quick social promotion, let everybody know where they can find our content at. So if you're listening to this, you already know one source where full-length episodes are appearing on Spotify and YouTube. But we also have stuff on really all of the social media platforms. So whatever your favorite social media platform is, you can find us, and you can find all of our links in one easy spot, singlebarrelsports.com. If you can spell it correctly, you're going to find a world of sports content. And we also have a merch store. So if you guys want a cool hat like this or some t-shirts or stickers, check out the store. We do have some rotating items on there. Hopefully fairly affordable, but that is a great way to support us and get the name out. But with that, let's go ahead and dive in, guys. Usually, what we do at the beginning of these episodes is we break down something we call the sports term of the week. And the goal here is really to kind of talk about something that's a little bit ambiguous, where maybe you will hear people using these phrases, but they're not commonly understood by the casual fan for exactly what they mean. And so tonight, in true form, talking about fantasy football, we have ceiling versus floor, which are terms that get thrown around all the time when comparing matchups and players. So, Travis, I will actually ask you first. In terms of kind of a fantasy football language here, what is a ceiling? What does that mean whenever someone talks about a player's ceiling?
Sure. Yeah. So, ceiling is kind of, when you're, plugging a guy into your lineup and you're kind of choosing between should I play player A or player B, a lot of those conversations of like, man, what's this guy's ceiling? What is the best possible outcome that I could get from this guy this week? And so that's really what ceiling means is like, my projection, you look on all these fantasy apps, projections like, hopefully over 10. But if you're right, right in that 8 to 10 range, the ceiling is, man, if he catches two more passes, he might be at 12 points. And so that's where you're really trying to gauge ceiling is like, man, what is the best possible case? If everything breaks for me, what's that ceiling there? And so like giving you an example, like Tyquan Thornton on the Chiefs last week, I was in a bad spot and had to start him. And that ceiling was like, man, his ceiling is he catches a bomb touchdown for Pat Mahomes. And so, it wasn't a bomb, but it was a touchdown. And so, we get close to that ceiling. So that's just something you kind of factor in when you're kind of setting your lineup for that week.
Yeah, like starting Charbonnet in Seattle this year, right? Like, oh well, if Seattle's within the first three, the first 3 yards to the goal line, like he's probably going to get a touchdown. His ceiling
Yep.
is huge for touchdown potential, but not a lot of touches around midfield. So you're hoping for the best, but you never really know for sure, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe kind of obvious what the opposite is, but Drew, I'll let you take it away. Tell us what the floor is when we're talking about our players.
Yeah. So ceiling being that upper range, floor, obviously, what is a reasonably, outcome? What's a reasonable outcome you would expect as a floor for somebody's performance? Meaning, not a zero. Like obviously, the floor for every player is zero. That's kind of assumed. But realistically, like if my player had a bad game to an average game, about how many points is that? So a lot of times, if you had like a T Higgins, he's not really giving you anything right now. So he's a pure ceiling play. His floor now has suddenly dropped from when Burrow was playing like an average game, probably like 12 points, huge ceiling. Burrow's gone and he's basically scoring 3 points a game. So his floor has drastically gone down since then. So just some math you're playing in a comfort level when you're setting that lineup.
Dang. Why'd you have to bring up the Bengals, man? I'm hurting over Joe going down, man.
We all got shares. You hate to see
It's
it.
tough. It's tough. It's tough, man.
That's actually my excuse for why I suck in the Penguins League. It's Joe Burrow. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel that. I feel that.
So I looked this up because I had no idea where these terms came from. I mean, they make sense when you talk about them, but sometimes it's nice to see kind of where sports terms come from. And this is from a Google search, so take this with a grain of salt. But the Google search told me that these terms, ceiling and floor, actually are borrowed from real estate and financial language. Basically, literally describing the upper and lower bounds of a range when you're kind of looking at prices. And maybe you guys have heard that before, or maybe not. But I thought that was kind of fascinating that we're taking something that's kind of like an economical term and then translating into a sports terminology here.
Mm.
So yeah,
Yeah.
like you guys said, it kind of. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, it's just the finance piece of it is interesting. I never thought of it that way. Like I was just, looking around your house like, yeah, floor ceiling kind of makes sense. But the finance aspect of it is interesting. I would have never known that. Shout out Jim and I for coming up clutch.
Yeah,
Voicing out.
exactly. Exactly. Yep. So yeah, I mean, at its core, like you guys described, it's kind of a risk versus reward type of a mentality here, and it just some putting some words to trying to make that all make sense.
Mhm.
And it became a lot more popular whenever daily fantasy sports started to become a thing. Basically, where you have a budget and you choose some players. The volatility of these players became a lot more important to understand because you choose them for one day. And so you really need to know if you're trying to aim for a ceiling or a floor on that one particular day based upon the number of
Yeah.
dollars you can allocate towards them. So, yeah, I find these things very fascinating, and you'll hear things like, like Amon-Ra St. Brown has a great floor because he's a guy that gets a lot of targets, and you're going to get a lot of catches usually every game, even if he doesn't score touchdowns, which he has been scoring a lot of touchdowns
Mhm.
this year. But
Daddy
uh,
has, daddy has.
Have you guys ever played in a best ball league before?
no, tell me about that.
I
I
have
don't
not.
really understand what that is.
So it's different than like a lineup league, which is what we're mostly used to playing. Where best ball league, you draft a whole team, but only like the highest possible score gets slotted into each position each week. So that changes the draft strategy because then you're going, well, I want as much upside as I can get, basically, um, versus having to make any hard decisions about like I'm going to start somebody and they blow up on my bench or whatever. So I know that's a really popular format today too.
Yeah, I've actually seen that on Sleeper.
Mhm.
Um, and I've been a little shy about checking it out because I'm a little bit shy about if I played it, how much money, how regularly would I start doing this, and how much money would I be throwing at
Right.
Yeah,
this?
Because
yeah,
the best on like the most fun part about fantasy, honestly, is usually the draft. So then when you're starting all of these like best ball leagues, you're just basically running drafts all day and then just keeping that team all year. And it's like, oh, $5, why not? Let's get another team
yeah.
going.
Why
It's
not?
it's
Yeah,
dangerous for sure.
yeah. It's real easy. You're
Yeah,
like, man,
so
I'm in 35 leagues, but 20 of them are
Right.
best ball leagues.
yeah. Wow, that sounds exhausting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
But
yeah,
hey, but
the
that's the
thing
best part
that's
about best ball is you don't have to worry about, managing the team during the season. You
Right.
just draft and
Right.
yeah,
I'll check it at the end of the year, see how I did.
set it and forget it, right?
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Yeah, like I said, I've heard best ball, but I have not dabbled in that.
Yeah.
And I still might not because I am a little scared of how how deep I may dabble.
Yeah.
But yeah, so ceiling and floor. The reason this is ambiguous is there really is no way to measure this, right? Like this is a thought that you have based upon some historical perspective and maybe matchups that they're against.
Hmm.
There's no such thing as like this is his floor number, right? Like this is all just subjective. It's very relative, and sometimes people can actually kind of misuse these terms a little bit too. Like someone's like, "Oh, well, he has a high ceiling," just because they think that some player has high potential. They're not actually reasonably projecting what they could and are expected to
Yeah.
score in fantasy football. So the terms can get thrown around all sorts of ways, but this is the intended way that we've talked about here.
Yeah, I think the
No.
distinction there is like what's interesting is like a lot of people will like use upside and ceiling kind of interchangeably, where like upside is like, I kind of view it as like upside is like a season long potential, where like ceiling is really kind of week to week. And so like yeah, I'm with you. Like those things get, used in kind of interchangeably when I kind of think they're two different things.
Yeah. I think I've maybe have been guilty of doing this at some point too.
We all
But
have.
I view
We all have.
the big difference here is in my opinion, like Keaton Mitchell, I think has high upside, but he's a healthy scratch right now for the Ravens, right? Like his ceiling is 0, but he
Right.
does have some upside. I think eventually he could score points.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, let's talk strategy a little bit here. I'm gonna have some questions for you guys, and I will have lots of them throughout the night. But talking about evaluating ceiling and floor, because this is such a subjective process here. And Drew, I'll start with you, but how do you personally evaluate this? Is it more of like a gut feeling? Is it data driven? Like, what are your thoughts on this process?
Yeah, and a lot of us, it's probably a mixture of the two. I know I'm definitely guilty of falling more on the analytics side for a lot of like fantasy decisions I make. There's some players that I'll roster like just for the vibe, but that's like a very special group of player. The rest of it, I'm pretty like robotic with a lot of decisions. So when I'm looking at like a ceiling or floor, I'm looking at what did other receivers do in that same position group, in that same offense, with that same coaching staff, or if there's a new coach coming over, what is somebody's ceiling in that new coach's offense, and think about all the trickle down of that. So I take like a really holistic view when I'm thinking about a player's upside and not just like, oh, they're playing that defense next week. What's the difference? Like I'm going to have the highest upside if I play them. So
Okay, yeah, I like that. I'm maybe not quite as objective as you are in my own personal take here. Travis, what about you? How do you evaluate this?
I'm the exact opposite. I'm a big no stats just vibes guy. I'm like, man, I'll throw some clips on. Like if I don't, I don't have Sunday tickets. Or like if I'll watch clips of games I don't have, here locally, and like man, that guy looks explosive with the ball in his hands, or I like the way the guy ran that dig route or something. And so, it's more, I try to balance that a little bit with like, okay, who am I playing? Like I look at it more of like a matchup basis. Like okay, is a guy I'm playing, does he have anybody I'm really scared of? No, then I'll probably pick the guy with a little bit more stable floor with, not as high of a ceiling. But if it's like like man, this is gonna, come down to a shootout, then, I'll probably lean more into the guys with the ceiling. And then a
Right.
lot of times, you're in a situation where you don't really have a choice. You're picking between bad and worse. And so it's just like, okay, what guy has the opportunity to catch an 80-yard touchdown? And so it's like,
Mhm.
yeah, I'm gonna play that guy. Versus like, yeah, I'll start this third string running back on a bad team that like may get 30 yards rushing on a good day. Like it's not gonna help me win. So that's
Yeah.
kind of what I roll with. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of that old, like, strategy of, like, am I hoping for boom or volume? And, yeah, it's tough debate to really have an actual answer to.
Yeah.
But going back to your Thornton thing earlier, I had, just not this week, but the week before, I had watched him play 2 weeks ago. So last week, I did one of those player prop bets, and I had, like, 50 yards for him or something because I was like, "Dude, this guy, he's fast, right? Like, he could get this in one
Mhm.
play." And then they threw that deep ball to him that ended up getting called back, and I was like, "Damn it, dude." And then the next play, they just did it all over again, and I was like, "Yeah,
Right.
Yeah.
money."
Yeah. Yeah. Give me that
Yep.
cash. Let me cash out. Yeah.
Yep.
And that's what's so like, and I feel so dumb, right? Because in our league, so we have, another fantasy term is fab or free agent acquisition budget, and so like in leagues like that, instead of having kind of waiver priority of like who has who's made the last waiver claim, you get dropped to the bottom. Everyone has a budget each year, and they can pick and choose like, oh, I'm going to spend $3 on this guy. I'm going to spend $5. I dropped 70 on Taekwon Thornton, all right, which is 70% of our annual budget. No one else made a waiver claim on him. It was just me at 70. And so, cool, I've got Taekwon Thornton who can score on a good day
Mission
7
accomplished.
points. Yeah, but it's just like, it's just like, man, I wish I would just put in like a $3 ad or something. But like that's the thing that's what's fun about, that waiver, methodology is like it's blind, right? So like you have no idea what the other guys are doing. So if you just got to take your best shot, and I had $70 left, and I said, might as well drop it all on Taekwon. So
Yep.
The interesting thing about Fab is, like, you can't take it with you when you're gone, right? So, like, over the last few years, I've really approached a mentality of, like, let's just send it because this $100 isn't gonna be here next year, Even if I save 90 of these dollars, I don't get them back, I don't have 190 next season.
Yeah.
no
I
rollover,
got
man.
a yeah, not to take this like too far off, but I got one of my like cornerstone pieces in another dynasty league of mine, Brock Purdy off waivers like mid-season. Again, just thinking like Trey Lance had gotten hurt, and then was it Jimmy G in front of him at the time, and he got hurt. But like a week before that, I threw like $5 fob on him just because like the third string quarterback for the Niners is now the backup. Like who's to say? And like I'm just gonna get a free quarterback for a little bit, thinking it was like a temporary thing, and I could just hold him over the Lance owner's head. And then Purdy just never gave the job up. So for $5, I got like a dude that goes like pretty high in startups, but
Yeah, I've
because
got a I've
there's
got
some
another.
upside. Just make a bet.
Yeah, I got another a fab story that we'll get into later, when we're talking about best and worst kind of fantasy
Yeah.
transaction. I got a funny story
Hell yeah.
for that one for sure. So
Hell yeah. Okay. Well, I have some more questions about ceiling or floor, but we kind of had answered this already. So I will ask this in the spirit of asking it, but we certainly don't have to go into great detail here. But Drew, I'll start with you. Do you prefer, if all things are the same, do you prefer having safe floors or swinging for the fences with the ceilings?
I said I was like Mr. Analytics, blah 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 earlier, but that's really only when constructing like my roster. Once I'm like setting my lineup, I'm like going for how do I score the most points every week. So I've been like a JMO truther for a long time, and I held on to him forever because I just believe in a dude's upside, and I would start him every week. Now that we don't need to debate JMO right now, but that is 100% like I want to score the most points I can, and I'll take some risks. But
Hell yeah. What about
Yeah, and
you,
I'm
Travis?
yeah, I'm kind of on the flip side, which is really funny because like I'm all no stats, just vibes. But when I'm in there looking at, I'm like, I really, I, it's one of my biggest flaws. I would feel like I would do so much better at fantasy football if they would just turn off these projections each week because I am always trying to like find the guy that has the best projections or whatever, which it tends to me being a little bit more conservative with my start sit decisions because the worst thing is like, yeah, like cool. If I would have started Tyquan Thornton the other night and he had one catch for 2 yards, and it's like, okay, cool. When I could have started Chris Rodriguez, who had 57 rushing yards or whatever, and
Right.
it's just like, yeah, I wasn't expecting Chris Rodriguez to score 12 points, but I also wasn't expecting him to get 1.2 points or whatever, and so that's where it's just kind of like you play that game a little bit, and like a lot of times, like I'll try to balance it or hedge that bet a little bit with like two flex spots. Like I'll have one guy that I'm shooting the moon with, and the other guy that I'm like, okay, just keep the boat afloat, and that's kind of where I try to play that game a little bit.
So
Yeah, I know I said all things equal, but I think the biggest influencer for me is where am I in the standings. I don't even necessarily look at how good is the team I'm against. For me, it's where am I at in the standings, and do I need to go out and kick someone's ass, or do I need to go out and just hold my ground? And that's kind of
yeah.
like what I try and do.
Yeah, yeah, I hear you.
Cool. Well, let's get into we'll do a weekly recap. We typically will recap some big stories in sports from kind of the week before. And this will be a little bit of a medley. I know you guys are kind of baseball guys. I haven't really watched a lot of baseball this year. So I will defer to you, but we had obviously a major sport in the MLB entering the playoffs this week. And there were some last minute storylines coming into those playoffs here. So Travis, I'll start with you, but what is your kind of take on the biggest headlines right now going on with baseball?
Yeah, it's been really interesting to kind of watch how the second half of the season is kind of unfolded. Like one of the big things is like the Mets missed the playoffs, and they had all that money tied up in Soto. They were looking really, really good, and they just fell off at the end of the year and missed the playoffs. And now Pete Alonso's opting out and hitting free agency, and it's going to be really interesting to see kind of what the Mets do going into next year. But in the playoff picture, I'm from St. Louis, so I'm a huge Cardinals fan, and so I've been kind of checked out because they've been pretty shitty this year, to be honest with you. So, it's been kind of fun to kind of watch from afar and kind of root for some of the teams that, I like certain players on or things like that. And what I really like about this postseason is there's not a super team out there, right? Like everyone, like at the beginning of the year, is like, oh man, how are the Dodgers going to lose? Like the Dodgers are going to win 100 games this year. Like there's no way they, don't. And they're in the wild card round, right? And so that's what's really interesting is it's with baseball because you're playing 162 games. There's so many things that can happen, but one of the big things is the push that the Red Sox and the Guardians made late in the year to kind of get into the playoffs. And it's kind of a tale of two sides, right? Like the Guardians, faced the Tigers and Skubal today, and he dominated, and so they lost 2-1. And then you get to the Red Sox, and Crochet threw a gem, and they beat the Yankees 3-1. And so it's just really interesting to kind of see how the wild card plays out. And I appreciate that it's a 3-game series and not just a one-off,
Mm.
because I think that's a better test of the team. So, my prediction, I'd love to see the Mariners make it to the World Series. And I'd love to see the Phillies get there. So
Oh,
it'll be
Okay.
it'll be fun. Yeah.
Okay. Nice. Who do you want to win?
I love Bryce Harper, so I would love the Phillies to get there.
Okay. You know what? I think he's a polarizing player, so there's going to be a lot of people who agree with you and a lot of people who adamantly disagree with you on that one.
no, I like
Um,
DM
Bryce a
me,
lot too.
DM me. Bring all that heat this way. Bring all that heat this way. I'll defend Bryce till I die.
that's the energy we love here, man. I mean, I've been getting cooked on TikTok this week, but hey, man, we take that in
Cook me,
stride.
cook me.
Drew, what do you think? I mean, looking at this playoff picture here, what are your thoughts?
I keep peeking up here because the Dodgers and the Reds are playing right now, and I know Shohei led off with a homer because
Oh,
he's the man. Um, I don't know. I don't have a team in the race. I'm a Cardinals fan like Travis, but I'm pretty fair weather these days. I used to be pretty into it no matter what, and they've just been kind of upsetting me, so I've tuned out. But I'm not going to root for the Cubs. I'm not anti Cubs. I just don't really want to root for them. The Reds would be kind of cool to get through there, but I'm kind of in the same boat. I want Seattle to get there. That'd be really cool. Probably rooting for them, just because that's a cool city, or that's never won it before. A lot of history. They really want it. Fun franchise, fun roster. So I'm definitely pulling for Seattle.
Yeah, the big
Yeah.
dumper hitting 60
Yes, sir.
bags this year. Come on, bro. Nasty.
J Rod.
I
Ooh,
love it.
that's a fun roster. It's a fun team.
Well, again, in the effort to have some baseball content, and you talked about this, Travis, but I Googled and I've heard about this. My buddy Tanner clued me into this, so I know he'd be pissed if I didn't say this on the podcast tonight. But Guardians came back from 15 and a half games down back in July to make what I believe, if I read correctly, is the biggest comeback of all time to make it to the playoffs from being that far back. So, Tanner, that was for you. I will accept payment via Venmo or PayPal.
Well,
And
your boy Tanner better talk to the boys and figure out how they're going to win 2 games in a row in this wild card, or they're in deep trouble. It's tough to lose the first one and beat a good team twice. So, Tanner,
yeah,
I'm hoping your boys can do it, but it's not looking good. Not looking good.
I love it. And just for the record, I always like to acclimate us to time. We're recording on Tuesday night, so when this episode comes out Thursday morning, some of these things we're talking about might look a little bit different, but this is
Mhm.
where things stand as of the exact moment of the recording. But let's jump into football, boys. There were some crazy stories this week. We had a couple of undefeated teams, the Eagles and the Bucs, went to battle this weekend, and the Eagles are a weird team this year, man. Like barely having to throw the ball, just kind of really relying on that amazing offensive line. What were your guys' thoughts on this game? I actually didn't get to watch this one live. I just saw the highlights and the score updates coming through my phone. But Drew, what are your thoughts on Eagles Bucks here?
Yeah,
Oh,
we
I
didn't
can't
get that
wait for
game,
that.
and I'm not okay. The last time I was just like a Federer hater the whole time for some reason. So whatever. I like the Eagles; they're fine. We did not get the Eagles game down here, and I don't pay for like Sunday tickets, so I didn't watch the game. But I usually watch like the NFL's official like 20-minute like fast recap of every game, like at the end of Sunday when I'm just winding down. So I did catch this one. Uh, Philly's really good. Like they don't have to do much to win. Baker is a dog, even though his team's like falling apart. He almost pulled off another comeback, several turnovers. I think Jalen, did they have, what's the thing? They had one completion in the second half or no completions in the second half or something. We got AJ Brown being real passive aggressive, which love that. Um, and the Eagles go to Tampa and it's really hot, but they beat another really good team on the road without having to really execute that well again. So they're just better, unfortunately.
Yeah, Travis, any other thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I'm a big Jalen Hurts fan. I love Jalen Hurts. I think he gets so much hate. Andrew hates him. He thinks he's terrible. He thinks he's bottom third of the league. And the good teams find a way to win. And the only thing I will say is I have come full circle on the tush push. All right. Like I used to be caping for it, like they're just so good at it, nobody else can do it, whatever. But then you start watching and they're just blatantly missing, false starts.
Mhm.
They're blatantly missing things like that. And like it's like, well, it's so hard to legislate. Well, if you can't call the play fair for both sides, then it shouldn't be part of the game. And nobody really wants to watch, 1934 football where they're just, running into each other for, 2 yards
Yeah.
a clip every time. Like that ain't fun to watch. And so you got to see the Eagles kind of play around with that a little bit this year. Like they ran a fake tush push and they, flipped it out the single. So there's some fun play involved there, but man, I don't know. They gotta figure out how to start slinging it a little bit because they're eventually going to run into somebody that their defense isn't going to have their day and they're going to be behind. And I mean, they've already done that and they came back, but if you can't keep AJ Brown happy and Devontae Smith happy, then and they start getting pissed and wanting out and requesting trades. That's just a lot of drama in the locker room you don't want to work with. And no matter how many self help books that AJ Brown's reading on the sideline, he's not getting the ball. He's getting paid to get the ball, right? So it's
Yeah.
tough. But I love Baker. Baker's the guy I want to have a beer with in the league if I had an opportunity to do so. And it's just two good teams going at it.
And the Rod God returned.
That he did.
It was a weird game for me because I thought the Bucs might actually come back. It looked like it couldn't happen, and then all of a sudden you get like a was it like a 77-yard touchdown to Egbuka, and then it was like a 70-yard touchdown to Irving, and you're like,
Yeah, just like bomb plays.
yeah, like is Baker about to do Baker things here? Because that dude never quits. I think we all can respect that. But
Yeah.
yeah, the Eagles I think are just, in my opinion, probably the most complete team at football, and they don't even have to exhaust half of their playbook to the point where I'm like, do they even know how to throw the ball anymore? But they have an incredible receiving core, and I can't really blame AJ Brown for being pissed off. He was pretty clear in the offseason about I'm pretty sure he's a captain on that team. He wanted to be an important piece to their success, and he's catching some heat because they're 4-0, which whatever. Like if you're a true team player, you're 4-0. Like maybe you shouldn't complain, but at the same time, I mean, he hasn't really masked what his priorities and what his wishes are, and he's, for lack of better words, kind of irrelevant on the football field right now. But you do
He's
have to
your
wonder too. Go ahead, yeah.
he's your wide receiver 48 in half PPR formats currently.
It's insane.
Tough scene.
And
And he's like a
scene.
top 5 receiver in the league. Unreal.
yeah, and it just makes you wonder, like, with him and Devonta Smith being as good as they are they still drawing enough attention that this run game and this quarterback run game is able to succeed? Because, like, if they weren't on the field, maybe defenses could truly just stack, 8 people in the box every single play. But I don't know, man. It's a tough thing. And Travis, I'm with you on the tush push. We talked about this a couple weeks ago, so I'll just say that I'm 100% with you. My entire viewpoint changed when they couldn't figure out if there was a fumble or not. And the refs were just kind of waving their hands in the air, and they were like, I don't know what yard line we're on, and I don't know who has the ball, but we're going to call it a first down and put it right here. And then I was like, okay, well, what the hell are we doing now?
Yeah.
Yeah, right. It's like, it's just so interesting, man. It's just like, obviously, like if he is laying on top of the offensive lineman and still moving forward, and he gets the ball ripped out of his hands, how is that not a fumble? How is that not a turnover? Like that's where I'm just like, what are we doing here, man? Like, what are we doing?
Yep.
Like, just give him the first down. Like, they line up and say, "Yeah, you got the first. Like, we'll move the ball 2 yards. You get the first and 10." Like, it's kind of crazy, man. I don't get it. But
Yeah, it's tough. It is tough. But we had another big game this week. Go ahead. Finish that
yeah,
one.
I think they got another. I think they got another vote. The owners group or whatever vote. I think in March of this year. So I'm sure it'll probably get voted out. But we'll see.
And I think it's cool that they're creative with like the fake tush push now, but it's almost like, damn, like this was already a cheat code. Now it's literally like impossible to stop this play.
And what's crazy to me is like I don't understand why. Like, what I don't understand how them pushing him helps anything. Like he's getting the first down by himself most of the time anyway. So like I still think if they what are they going to say? You can't QB sneak anymore. Like as long as if they're going to outlaw pushing an offensive player, then Jalen's still going to be able to sneak it for 3 yards every time. It's still going to happen. Like
well, and
it's
I mean,
ugly, but
it used to be a rule too that you couldn't help push an offensive player forward, and it was kind of boring that way too, right? So like, I don't know what the middle ground is, and I don't envy the people who have to figure that out. But I do think something should change. I just don't have this solution. Let's talk about some other games here. We had a lot of actually pretty entertaining games this past weekend. Big competitors, Rams playing against the Colts this weekend. Never thought I would say that was going to be a really fun and exciting game, but here we are with the revitalization of the Colts under the Danny Dimes regime. And the Rams were down, man. They were down in this game, but they came back and they did beat the Colts. What were your guys' thoughts on that game? Drew, you can go first.
Yeah, these are actually like the 2 teams in my youth. So I like both of them a lot. I mean, the Rams I think are a top 5 team in the NFL. So you're obviously expecting them to win this one, especially coming home. It was a tough trip across the country last week to go to Philly and kind of choke. Like they got up and that was impressive, but they couldn't hold on. Come home, they take care of business. Stafford is the man. He continues to just sling it. Travis and I disagree on who might be the best receiver in the NFL at the moment. And I think that dude's on the Rams. Super
Devontae
Puka
Adams.
Nacua.
Okay.
Yeah. Puka's just on track for like over 2,000 yards at the moment on the season. But no, and then on the other hand, though, the Colts didn't roll over. Daniel Jones still played a decent game. They had some turnovers. I know Adonai Mitchell just threw a touchdown away, like literally just dropped it through the end zone, and they It's a weird rule. We could debate that, but Jonathan Taylor had like a 60-yard breakaway touchdown that was sick, and then it got called back on a hold. So could have gone a different way for the Colts. I think they're legit. I think they're going to be in the playoffs. But I'm happy the Rams won.
Yeah, it's a weird thing with the Colts. I don't think a lot of people thought that they would come out and be 3-0 and damn near
Mhm.
4-0 this year against the Rams. And now it's almost a foregone certainty, like that they're going to win their division because there's just a very honestly not a lot of competition there. So, I thought if they won their division after a couple weeks, I'm like, yeah, I mean, they could win this division, but now they look like a legitimate contender, which is kind of crazy. Travis, what are your thoughts on that game?
Oh man, I two things. Puka Nakua, if you put him on any other team, he's the second best receiver on that team. Doesn't matter what team he's on. Okay. Come at me in the chat, come at me in the comments. The guy is slow. He's just a try hard. All right. Like, yeah. Yeah. You can look really like there's a difference between activity and accomplishment. He is very active on the field. He runs really hard. He runs into guys, but
He's
it's
like unguardable. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, because Matt Stafford is throwing him open every single play. But bygones be bygones. Puka is fine. Again, we'll get back to my Puka take later in this conversation. But yeah, I it's tough for AD Mitchell, man. That sucks. That sucks. You go from having like the best play of the week to what what a whoops, and maybe he'll throw some more stick 'em on those gloves or something. And I don't know. I mean, JT did the same thing last year, right? Like he had a fumble at the goal line and cost him. I do think it's a dumb like I do think it's dumb that it's a touchback and goes to the other team. Like I think it should be like you get the ball at the 10 or something. Like it's so weird to me that it's just like yeah, the other it's just stupid. It's just so dumb. But yeah, I think the Colts are serious contenders. Is really funny, looking back into the offseason where like, oh, Anthony Richardson's taking steps, like he's gonna be the guy and like he looks pretty good. And it's just like, no, not Daniel Jones is him. And then you got all these Giants fans that are like, I can't believe we let this guy, got rid of this guy. Like, what are we doing, man? So it's
Yeah.
fun. It's a fun team, and I'm with
Yeah.
Andrew. I think the Rams are a top 5 team in the league, and got a really young defense, and they got a really good
Defense is
offensive
nasty.
line. Yeah, Jared Verse is a monster. So it'll be a fun team to watch for sure.
I've got to own it, man, because in the offseason, multiple times I said I think the Rams will take a step back this year, and I will own that now. I think the Rams have taken a step forward this year, and that I was wrong with that. I will say bold claim. I thought Stafford wouldn't be his true self this year, especially when we're talking about back issues and maybe not ever playing football again. And I thought losing Cooper Cup, it kind of made sense, but also I wasn't sure if this team would be the same with just Puka. And then, then they get Devontae, and I'm like, well, is he still the same? Because eventually wide receivers kind of hit a cliff. But yeah, I mean they're rolling on every cylinder right now, and it's kind of amazing to me that they even have a loss because they genuinely look like one of the best teams in the league, in my opinion.
Yep. No
Yeah.
argument.
Another team that was dominant this week, and I give them shit sometimes, but the Chiefs looked like the Chiefs of old this weekend, and they beat the shit out of the Ravens. We'll call it what it is. I predicted Ravens to win this game, and again, fell on my face with that prediction here. What are your thoughts? Just kind of brief thoughts on that game. Travis, we'll start with you this
It's
time.
it's man, it's crazy what a little spiel do to an offense, right? Like they get Xavier Worthy back, and all of a sudden they're a competent offense again. It's like when a defense has to account for one guy on every single play, like it opens up so many different things. Like Andy Reid can now just start cooking because he's at a different level than anybody else, right? Like on the field, like his speed is there, like he's got good hands, he's a good route runner. Like I remember when he was coming out, like okay, it's a 4-2 guy, like cool, like another guy that is just not ever going to be, he's just going to be a gadget guy, and like it's never going to play out. But I mean, his routes are crisp, he's getting open, he's making contested catches, and it just unlocks so many different things. The only thing I really have with the Chiefs right now is their running back production is just so awful. Like
Yeah.
Pacheco is just slow and like doesn't look explosive. I think they got to start getting Brashard Smith the ball a little bit more. He looks dynamic when he gets the ball in his hands. And I mean, why is Kareem Hunt still on the roster? Like, can we talk about that for a minute? Why is he still on the roster? Like,
I
come
think he's on the
on.
roster. I think he's on there because Pacheco sucks. And if you're listening, Anthony, stop trying to trade him to me. I do not want him.
That's really funny.
Yeah, and on the Ravens side, like I think everything's gonna be fine. I think they're gonna be fine as long as Lamar's not gonna miss a long time. Like I know a lot of people are hitting the panic button, but man, that team is so good. Like they're 3 plays away from having the inverse of their record right now. I
Yep.
mean, Derrick Henry's never fumbled like at all in his career. Never had fumbling issues. He's got 3 or 4 fumbles already this year in like big moments of the game. And
Mhm.
that defense isn't playing well. And that's the thing is like the Ravens have always had one of the best defenses in the league, and Kyle Hamilton's the best safety in the league, and they're not playing up to snuff. And I think they'll get things figured out. I got faith in Harbaugh, but it's not looking great. They got a lot of work ahead of them, but I think they'll be okay.
Yeah, I'll keep believing in the Ravens, and I think the Chiefs are only going to get better. Like you said, they've extended the deep ball play now, and they're going to get Rashee Rice back in a couple of weeks, and watch out. And I will give Pat Mahomes credit. I think he is one of the best quarterbacks at throwing the ball deep and
One
either
of
getting the completion.
or the
Yeah,
best.
let's call it what it is. Yeah, I mean, he is the best because even if he doesn't get the completion, he's not throwing the interception. There's plenty of quarterbacks in this league where when they just wind up and throw it, it's like a 50-50 ball, but Patrick Mahomes never leaves it to 50-50 chance. Drew, let's get your thought. Actually, if you have any thoughts on the Chiefs, Drew, let's hear them. And then I want you to take us to the Packers-Cowboys game and how that ended in a tie.
Yeah, I'll go real quick on that game. That was a big game and one of the few we had down here. Chiefs obviously won. Baltimore's defense is looking like a get right defense, like we're trying to figure some stuff out. Worthy clearly fixes some things. I'm excited to see Rice back out there. It's funny how functional the offense looks when his 2 best weapons are wide receivers the Patriots waived. And then the only other thing I'm watching really is like Lamar got hurt. And they're 1-3. I think they have a bye in 2 weeks, but then there's also a little bit like how hurt is he? Did he kind of quit or were they just out? So they went. There's some weird reporting that needs to happen there. It feels like maybe his hammy just hurt a little. I don't know. Uh, but then so it was a good game though, and I think the Chiefs needed to win that more than Baltimore did. I think the AFC North is still gettable, and the Chiefs going down 1-3 in the West, they're probably toast.
Mhm.
But then Sunday night, that was Sunday night, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. We got a game that I was not really looking forward to. I thought the Packers were just going to stop them. Dallas had missing half their offensive line, no CeeDee Lamb. Their defense is already terrible. They're like worse than the Ravens. And then the opposite has been true of the Packers, where their offense has been clicking. Although last week was a little rough, if I remember, or whenever they played Cleveland. But their defense is awesome, and they go and trade for Parsons. And then suddenly, like, they can't stop anybody, and Dallas can't stop anybody either. So he just keeps scoring and scoring. Crazy back and forth at the end. We up in overtime, almost botched it. Like Jordan Love almost just ate the clock and they would have lost. And Stephen A would have been having a great time with that. um, and I don't know, the tie is so whack. Like it just
So
didn't
dumb.
after such a fun game, it was such an underwhelming finale.
Yep.
Here's my take. There should be no ties. You should have both kickers at the 50-yard line, just trading kicks. And whoever misses first.
Oh well, the Cowboys will never lose then.
That's
You know what? I think that would boost the salary of kickers across the league. That's for sure.
Dude,
Hey, Brandon Aubrey's got that C on his chest for a reason, player.
he's the man.
I love it. Well, let's talk injuries. There's some crazy big injuries that happened this week. The biggest of all being Malik Nabors and Jackson Dart's first start. And I saw there was a Thanos meme that basically said,
Oh.
did Jackson Dart get his win? And he's like, yes. And they were like, what did it cost? And they said Malik Nabors. And I was like, ooh, it's so true.
Yeah.
That's a big one, man. That's a second-year player who's considered at least a top 5 receiver in the league. By talent, he's probably higher than that. And I actually haven't seen the reports, but I've heard ACL, right? I mean, he's definitely out for the
Oh,
year, right?
Yeah, it's
he's done.
ACL.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah,
he's already on the IR, like officially.
Yep.
yeah.
And then you fast forward a day and you got Tyreek Hill, who hasn't been as good this year, but is still always Tyreek Hill. Um, over 50 yards in like the first or second quarter, and then boom, like a weird
That's
freakish
gruesome.
tackle.
Yeah,
Nothing about
yeah.
that tackle really looked that weird except for how his leg looked afterwards. And I've seen mixed reports on that. Like could this be career ending? Could this be where he comes back in 2 years? Is there
Mm,
an outside shot he comes back late next year? But this was like a really, really bad injury. This is not like a broken bone or a singular ligament. This was like a dislocation plus multiple ligament
yeah,
tears.
Yeah.
I don't know. If we see him again, I think it's going to be a couple of years. And then the weird thing is he's getting carted off and he's like cheering. He's like clapping and he's yelling yes and
weird
he's
vibes for
smiling,
sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
which who am I to fault a guy? His body is probably in tremendous shock, but it was just like one of the most bizarre things I've ever seen before.
He's got that guaranteed money. He's like, I don't have to play with two anymore, and I got all this money. I'll rehab and go on to my next team.
now he's got an excuse to not watch all 20 of his kids. He can't get off the couch.
And maybe he goes back to the Chiefs next year. Can you imagine?
Yeah. It's definitely interesting from like a dynasty standpoint because one, he's 31. I know I think he has a quote saying like he plans on playing next year. So he's not planning on retiring at the moment. But like Travis had him healthy in one of our leagues and could not sell him for anything because it feels like a ticking time bomb. And then he shreds his knee and he's that old, and his whole thing is speed. And it's like, okay, well, what do you
Yep.
look like 32 or 33 coming off that
Right.
surgery? So he might be kind of just dead as far as dynasty goes versus Nabors, who was a first round startup pick coming into this season, basically the wide receiver like 3 or 4, depending on where you put him with Lamb behind Jefferson and Chase. And now he's out for the year. You don't really know, like, if you're a contender built around him, should you sell him off for what you can now to replace the points or just suck it up because he's so valuable? And
Yeah.
it's a bummer for the Giants because they lost OBJ to an ACL and
Yep.
right when he was like hitting his prime. And then here we are X amount of years later, it happens to Neighbors again. Right when Dart
Yeah.
hits the game too. Looks like things were pointing
Yeah.
up.
Yeah. And OBJ had that tweet about MetLife, taking another knee, and
Mm-hmm.
it's
Mm-hmm.
crazy when you start digging into that. And I think they got to do something about the turf, man. At least like revisit it or put new turf in, every couple of years or whatever. It's just crazy how many guys have been going down there. But
Yeah.
that's what's interesting to kind of, Andrew's point is like if you're the Giants, like it's kind of like I can see both sides. Are like obviously there's no good time for an injury like that, and it's prayers that everything goes well and him getting healed up. But it's just like on the one hand, it's like, okay, well, like we didn't really think we're going to be anything this year. But on the other side of things, it's also like now we can't get a true representation of what Jackson Dart is, right? Because our
Yep.
best weapon is gone. And so now you're trying to like project, okay, like he looks good here, but he's throwing to Wandale and Darius Slayton and like
Mm-hmm.
guys that are like kind of like on roster bubbles almost. Like Wandale's probably fine, but like Jalen Hyatt's now getting reps and he
Yeah.
sucks. So it's kind of interesting. And going back to Tyreek, it's just I don't know how he plays again, like at a high level, right? Like guys that are they're he's a small, like he's not tall, like he's got a small frame. It's all built on speed, like Andrew's talking about, and guys that have that archetype don't recover well from a catastrophic knee like that. Like I just,
Yeah.
especially when he's 31, like
Yep.
yeah, I'm sure he's gonna play someplace next year, but it's not gonna be, anywhere near where he was. Like, he's not
Mm-hmm.
like the, Larry Fitzgerald, Devontae Adams guys that are just known for being able to get open right off the line. Like, that's just not his game. And so, it'll be interesting to kind of see how that all plays out.
Yeah, it
Mhm.
just feels like he's gonna lose all of the things that he does that make him him.
Yeah,
And he could be, like a role player in the future, but it just feels like this was the end of the true Tyreek Hill.
yeah. And we're not gonna get a foot race with him and DK. Like, it's not happening anymore, right? Like, just a bummer, man. I was
And,
hoping
and
I'd
I
get
show
him.
speed. Did he ever race? Did he ever race I show speed?
I don't know. I don't know. I know he's been reaching out to like Noah Lyles, wanting to rate. I'm like, come on, brother. Like
Yeah.
let's that's Olympic gold medal
Yeah.
speed, brother. Come on now.
Right.
Like, I know you're fast,
Right.
but that's a different league. That's different.
That's literally the only thing that guy does, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Real quickly, I just want to point out we had some big losses in college this year. I'm not going to really labor this. Let's move forward here. But
Sure.
LSU and Penn State both lost two top 5 teams. I think it was 3 and 4. Both went down this weekend. So we'll have some pretty big shakeups in the rankings this week. But gonna kind of stick to NFL and fantasy football for the most part with this episode here. Upcoming games this week. I know I promised you guys we would go quick through the weekly recap, and here we are. We did not go quick. So um,
I like
let's
to
just
talk.
talk briefly. Yeah, no, I love it, and it's a good conversation. But let's talk briefly upcoming games this week. 2 biggest ones. I think the 3 of us agreed on. We're looking at 49ers going to the Rams, Bucs going to the Seahawks. Let's talk Niners Rams first. And Drew, you can go. What are your thoughts on this game?
uh, Classic NFC West rivalry. Um, Kind of the two heavyweights. A lot of people thought it would be them or like the Niners or the Rams maybe winning, and then the Seahawks were like the hipster pick coming into the season. Now the Seahawks look pretty good. So the NFC West looks pretty competitive. So every win that you can get in division matters. This is going to be a big game for both the teams. The Niners are just dropping players like crazy right now. So the Rams got to be having the advantage at the moment, but the Niners have been putting up a good fight in most of their games. So
Shanahan's got McVay's number, right? Like he's beat
yeah.
him like what 10 out of 16 times or whatever that stat is. Like he's got his number, but lots changed this year. So we'll see.
Yeah, and they don't have a complete team, like you said, and it's just such a weird statistic. If you look at the past 3 to 5 years, the 49ers are by far the most injured team in the league, and it's like, why is this happening to the same team? But Rams are
Need a new
6.5 point favorites. Yeah, I guess so. Rams are big favorites, so I think the Rams take this one, and
It
they've
was
like
6.5
yeah
in LA.
6.5 right. Yep, right now so far.
I think I might
6.5.
take the Niners. I might take the
Oh,
points there, but
gonna take the points. Okay.
yeah.
Well, we'll talk about that later. I think. I think that's in the picks later.
Well, hold on.
And then Bucks and Seahawks. I mean, I'm a big Bucks guy, but we're playing it in Seattle here, and they have looked good. I think the big tell here is that Darnold has been great. People were questioning that. So, what do you guys think, Bucks or Seahawks, and kind of what are you looking forward to in that game?
I it's hard for me to bet against Baker. I just love Baker, and I think he just has that locker room believing in him, and it's just he had a quote after the game of like if one of them's in the like one of the guys is in a dark alley, the whole team showing up, like that's kind of how I like he said it, but it's like that's kind you didn't need to say it, Baker. Like I knew that's how your team is, but and I'm not a Darnold truther. He's I just don't see it, man. You get pressure on him, and he starts seeing ghosts again. And I think he's looked pretty good this year, but JSN had a weird game last week where he wasn't involved for like the first half, and it just kind of depends on how Ken Walker and Charbonnet run the ball. I think if they can stay ahead of the sticks and continue to put pressure on the Bucs. McDonald's got that defense looking pretty nice, and so it'll be a fun shootout for sure.
Yeah, give me the Bucks here. They're just exciting, man. Like you said, and never count them out of anything. I think that's the
Yeah.
exciting part about that team.
We'll see Bucky's out there.
Yeah, that's a question mark.
Big. That's big.
And it's a weird thing for me from a fantasy football perspective. You guys know I'm high on Bucky. I've talked highly of him. I said he would be at least a top 3 finishing running back in fantasy points by the end of the year. I know he had a slow start. Maybe number 1 is what I had said. I know he had a slow start, but I love the guy. But I have Rashad White on my bench, man. So it's kind of like, what do I want to happen here?
Yeah, that's the pros and cons of fantasy, right? Is when you start to like, man, I really like this guy and I hope he does well, but I got his backup on the bench.
Yep.
It
complicates your emotions as a fan. That's for damn sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm going to ask you guys a question here. This is shifting gears just a little bit, but as we look ahead, while we're looking forward here, what's your gut reaction about the state of your team and the league that we all share in fantasy football this year? And Drew, I'm going to kick it off with you first.
The state of my team. I had a very encouraging game last week. It was
Always.
To say the
Every time
course
you
least.
it,
play me.
of
Every
course it
time
was
you play
against
against
you.
me.
I am undefeated against you in our 3 years of this league. I'm pretty sure, and I always score like my season high against you. Um, But I have a team that should be performing better than it has been, and I have a lot of, like, excuses, but this was an encouraging week where I didn't have to make some drastic decisions to stay in because I don't wanna waste the season. So I think I'm a firm playoff, contender. I'm hoping that the Bengals stay relevant enough that they choose to bring Burrow back, because he is basically how I will win a championship this year. If I don't have him, I think my ceiling's, like, 3rd or 4th place unless my team just like gets insanely hot.
That's fair. I mean, I think you have a great team, and I think this week was more reflective of what your team looks like
Let's hope so.
naturally. Travis, what about
Toes.
you? How you feeling about your team?
Oh man, I'm pretty close to hitting the panic button, dude. I'm playing that game of like, is it worth sending the limited draft capital that I have left to try to acquire some pieces that I can just plug in? I'm in a weird spot. Three of the acquisitions that I made are in the last year and a half with Terry McLaurin, Mike Evans, and James Conner are all going down. Conner's gone for the year. Evans, there's not been an official word. Everything's saying a couple weeks, multiple weeks. He always pops up with a hamstring injury at some point during the year. I'm hoping it sounds pretty mild. It sounds like it's a strain more than anything else, but I got a thin bench. I'm pretty top heavy, so I really need Christian McCaffrey and Derrick Henry to start putting up some game changing points because the way it is now, it's just like I got a head to head win this week, but I lost the median, and it's just like cool. Like that's great. I didn't move in the standings too much, but you know I uh, I also got to keep in mind that like our league in general is pretty top heavy. So like there's 5 teams that are like basically playoff locked from the beginning of the season. And then there's like that 6th spot that there's like 2 or 3 teams that are kind of vying for it. It's just kind of who ends up being there. There's some surprising teams that we didn't think were going to be there. They're in the mix. Um,
Hmm.
and so that's where I'm trying to try to find those trade acquisitions that I can make. I send up a 4th for Calvin Austin. It's like he's not a world beater by any means, but if it's a guy that can I can plug in on bye weeks or through injuries, then it's worth it for what I could
Yeah.
get in the 4th. So
How about
Yeah.
the Cyclones?
You know, I'm feeling cautiously optimistic. There's a couple of thoughts running through my head right now. I'm in first place. I have the most points for. It's a great place to be because in the last 2 years, I have felt like I had a competitive team, but I wasn't in this position. You guys know the first year I barely snuck into the playoffs and then made it to the
got
finals.
Mhm.
hot, got hot.
Last year I got hot late and then, lost in like the second round of the playoffs. And so this year, I'm hoping that I don't have to get hot late. I'm hoping that I can kind of ride this wave that I'm on. But I also feel like I'm like one key injury away at this point because I had George Kittle go down, which hurt. But then I also have had a lot of my depth pieces get hurt too, to the point where I'm like, I don't really have any depth left. And I made a trade in this offseason to get a lot of depth. So now I'm like, man, if I'm like one key player away from not being able to keep doing what I've been doing. But I will say I'm a lot more comfortable with the position that I'm in, knowing that the state of the league is how it is. I'm pretty sure I'm going to make the playoffs,
Mhm.
and then once you get there, anything can happen. So I'm feeling okay.
Yeah.
I'm not feeling I'm as a number one seed with the most points. I'm not probably as confident as that situation normally would be, but I'm feeling good.
Dude, you got a wagon, man. As long as Josh and Lamar are putting up points, you're gonna be solid. You're gonna be in good shape. So
Yeah.
if Lamar's out for 2 weeks, I got some QBs that you can come get from me. Come on over.
What
Come on
man?
Settle
over.
down.
I got old as balls Aaron Rodgers on my bench ready to score some
There you go.
touchdowns.
There you go. There you go.
Hell yeah. Well, it has been so much fun being in the league, and I'm going to shift to where we kind of talk a little bit about the league now. But our league is a dynasty fantasy football league, and not everyone has had the privilege of playing in a league like that. So I want to talk a little bit about what that is, And I'm just going to ask just some general prompts of you guys. So, Travis, what is a dynasty fantasy football league? Kind of just generally speaking, what is it? How does that work?
Sure. Yeah. So if you have a good concept of what we would call a redraft league, which is what most people are in, where you show up sometime in August or September and draft your team, and then that's the team you have for the year, and then at the end of the year, whoever wins wins, and then you do it all over again next year. It's like that, except you have a startup draft. You draft all of your players, and then every year you have a rookie draft. So you only draft rookies, and so you have draft capital to trade away for other players. It's just a lot more kind of a long game than redraft, and so it's a lot. It's really fun. It's more. I think it's a lot more strategic than redraft leagues. Because like a lot of times in redraft, you're like, why? What's the purpose of trading in a redraft league? Like you just choosing your pick 'em. Like I picked this guy instead of that guy. Like that's just what it comes down to. But like in dynasty, it's like okay, my team is very much a win now team. I've treated all of my future picks for like the next year or 2 years away to try to get the best possible team I can have in my window, because then you start playing into like, okay, these running backs that I have, they're going to age out in 3 years. I got to win in these years, and then I got to rebuild my team. So it's a lot more strategic, and you got to kind of think about, okay, what am I giving up, in the future to get my team as good as it can be now.